Hello and welcome to the Backpack Show, everybody. We are one Chris Brogan short of our usual duo, but I will handle things just fine. This is the show where we talk about success and how you can achieve it by looking at other people and their successful endeavors. Today we're going to talk with Dr. Judy Rabinor, who's written a new book, The Girl in the Red Boots, Making Peace with My Mother. And we invited Judy to the show to talk about how our complex relationships with our mothers continue even into adulthood and how you can let go of some of maybe the old grudges you've been holding on to. Maybe you don't even realize you have them, but how important that can be for moving forward, even if your mother is no longer with us. Dr. Judy, thanks for joining. I'm going to officially open the show. So give me a tiny sec to blow everybody's ears out with some heavy metal music, and, and then we'll get started with some healing. How does that sound?
Great.
Perfect. I need to find the correct one.
Hi everyone, Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gargone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
So right out of the gates, you're putting yourself out there, right? As a therapist who specializes in mother-daughter relationships, talking about your own relationship with your mother has got to be complicated. Speaking of which, Chris's mother is here. Hello. I love her to pieces. Hi. And his father, his parents are very supportive. They come every day. I feel like that's a good sign. Hi, Chloe.
Wonderful.
Chloe in Scotland. So talk to us about that, about taking a chance on exploring your own relationship with your mother in such a public way.
Well, you're going to make me laugh, but a current patient of mine told me that she had bought the book, that she wanted to buy the book. And I've seen her for many years, and I said to her, I want to give you a copy of the book. And I mailed it to her. And what I wrote on the front page was, now it's my turn to be on the other side of the couch. So we both got a big laugh at that because you asked the right question. What's it like to let people know that I'm the therapist and I'm not a blank screen and I'm not perfect and I had my own problems with my mother? And of course, I've thought a lot about this. Honestly, I feel like this is the world we're living in now. We're living in a world where it's important to let people know that all people have shortcomings, flaws, imperfections. And the more we can do that, the better people feel about themselves. You know, holding ourselves up to a standard of perfection is just a very draining, exhausting experience, correct?
Especially if your mother is perfect.
Well,
I feel like I should show you my mother, Dr. Judy. Hold on.
Okay, let's see your mother.
All right, I'm going to share my entire screen, so don't judge me, everybody. I don't know what all's over there. So this is my mother and my father.
Oh, wow.
And right? She was a knockout. And so one of my friends
Adorable.
said,
Adorable.
you look so much like your dad, Carrie. And I said, thank you so much. Every woman with a smoking hot mom wants to hear she looks just like her dad. Thank you. I appreciate that. So my mom, for the longest time, thought that she was fat. She still does to this day. And she's the thinnest I've ever seen her. At 81 years old now, she's tiny. So she's got a lot of body dysmorphia, but you can see she's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, this is a tremendous societal problem that most women suffer from body dysmorphic disorder. Most women are not satisfied with their bodies and think life would be better if they only lost 5 pounds, as if that's a magic bullet, right? Losing 5 pounds as if it would really change your life. And you know that I've specialized in eating disorders for decades. And that's the beginning of somebody getting better, knowing that they're deciding to come to therapy and think, why do I torture myself with, you know, needing to lose weight when maybe what I really need to do is accept myself?
Well, it has to start somewhere though, right? So my sister had a lot of, she didn't have body dysmorphia necessarily, but she was very focused on her weight, I think in part because of my mother. Not to lay blame, but these things, they start somewhere, right?
They start somewhere, but, you know, I have a kind of mission, which is to be careful that we don't blame mothers for everything. Because our mothers were our first attachment figure, because our mothers were our first lovers, they were also our first heartbreaks. The first person to say no to us was generally our mother. The first person to put up their hand and say, you know, don't run in the road, or you can't eat that, or it's time to go to sleep was generally our mothers. So we have these conflicting relationships with our first lover and our first heartbreak. And they follow us into our lives.
Sophia says, "Where's Chris? Chris isn't feeling well. I'm sorry about that." I imagine he didn't want to examine his relationship with his mother, who was a
Probably.
wonderful person in his presence.
Very astute observation. A lot of people adore this topic, and a lot of people are allergic to thinking about their mother. You know, my own mother, she told, one of the gripes I have is that my mother told me her parents were perfect. Perfect. She had perfect parents. And of course, growing up, I wondered, how could you have perfect parents? I don't have perfect parents. What's wrong with our relationship? Am I supposed to have a perfect relationship with you? And really, it wasn't until I sat down and wrote this book that I thought, why did my mother need to carry on this mythology that her parents were perfect? Well, she is also not alive anymore, so I can't ask her that question. And that's one thing I hope everybody listening decides to do. If you have any questions to ask your mother, now's the time if your mother's alive. Don't wait, because once they're gone, you can't ask.
My mom's actually a little bit losing it, so I think I might have missed the window on certain things. But I was a very chatty child, so I had a lot of questions answered at a very young age. But if you haven't yet started, definitely pepper your mom with questions. She will love you for it. One of the things that you talk about in the book is that your mother wouldn't admit to being upset when she was upset, even if she was visibly upset. Did you ever get to the bottom of that? And did that carry over to you? Like, do you express when you're feeling upset?
Oh, well, that's a great question. I feel that I describe my mother in the book as an uber optimist. And it was honestly a big problem between us, because no matter what happened to me, she would tell me, don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Your friends drop you. You have no friends for 7th grade. That is not a nothing. But she would say, wait till a boy drops you. This is not a big deal. And honestly, I think this is what contributed to me being a therapist, because what do I do all day? I help people honor their issues. If somebody says, I really feel upset, I don't say, you're going to be fine. I say, tell me about it. Tell me more. Tell me more. Because I know that acknowledging our problems is the way we get over them, not shoving them under the rug.
So when you're acknowledging your problems, that's one thing. I think it can be a very different thing to ask your mom, hey, mom, why are you so messed up? Like, how do you have some of these conversations?
Well,
and I mean, you don't want to like tie up your mom and show her a slideshow of her crimes, right? So
no,
how do you approach this?
You don't. But you can ask your mom. I mean, questions. Sometimes when I have a mother and daughter in my office, I'll ask the daughter, ask your mother, what was the hardest period in her life? Ask her, when were you most unhappy? What were the things that really bothered you when you were my age? And that's a very bonding thing for a mom to, flash back to when she was in 7th grade or when she was 15 years old. And those are the kind of questions people really don't necessarily ask, but most moms are eager to talk about them.
My mom, I once asked my mom if she thought we'd be friends if we weren't mother-daughter, if we were like the same age. And she was like, no, probably not. Because we're so different.
Well,
but not what a daughter wants to hear, but true. So.
Well, that's interesting. But that is a problem for so many mothers and daughters, that they are honestly a bit out of sync. I mean, I feel my mother, I never really understood whether this was a defense, that everything was fine. She was always happy. But I had like a dark side. I felt like I was the kind of person who would brood over things, and I would read sad novels and I'd then want to read them again, and she would not. I used to say my mother would rather make a Jell-O mold than read the Diary of Anne Frank, and eventually by the end of my life, I came to really accept her. I came to accept it's perfectly okay that we're different. She'd rather make a Jell-O mold or a brisket, and I'd rather read the Diary of Anne Frank for the 4th time.
So, Chloe had a question. What would you say to those mothers who maybe aren't ready to acknowledge or answer or address those questions? It sounds like you're saying start somewhere that they want to talk about. Start with a topic that they'll be happy to open up about.
Well, I have. I think the real responsibility of the mother is to meet the daughter's needs. And so when your 14-year-old asks you a question, be grateful that she wanted to talk to you, that she wants to know who you are. Because most people think of their mothers simply as mother. They don't think of them as a person who was a person before she was a mother. And asking your mother what it was like when she had a boyfriend that her parents didn't like, for example, it opens up volumes of good conversation. So I think it's really the task of the mother to try to meet the daughter's needs, although by the time somebody gets to your situation where your mother's 81, the roles have reversed, right?
I was a surprise baby, Dr. Judy.
Oh,
My mom told me, she was like, I was going to leave. I said, well, then what were you doing, Mom? She's like, I figured, what the hell?
well, how did you feel hearing you were a surprise baby? Was that good news or bad
Um,
news?
I don't know. I guess at the time I was frankly surprised she told me, but I was like a little journalist. I was asking her questions all the time. Like, when you were my age, what did you think? What did you do? What did you want to be when you grew up? Like, just kind of all the time. And I think she got so used to just answering my cockamamie questions. She just
Yeah,
threw it out there.
look at what you do now for a living. You ask people questions.
I do.
So
I'm very
you
curious.
do. And so that was a great training. You had a great mother who trained you to think that if you ask a question, you'll get an answer. And now you do this to earn your living. It's fabulous.
I wouldn't say it hurt my feelings when I heard it. I was just like, huh, you know, but I thought I'll take it, because
Well,
I'm happy as I am. So whatever happened to make it that
also,
way.
maybe everything is really attitude. If she says you were a surprise baby, as if, oh my God, was I lucky? I had such a surprise. You is different than, oh no, you were a surprise. I had my bags packed.
Well, so I had to accept that my mom doesn't like children. She just is not like a kid person. She had kids at the time because it was what you did, but it wasn't her calling. Like, she doesn't love kids. She told me once, do you ever sit at the dinner table with a kid and listen to their little drivel for an hour? It is not fun. She does not like little kids. So I just accepted that about her. And when I had my kids, I knew she wasn't going to be like, ooh, tell me about the snails you found at the park. Like, that's just not her. But I think my siblings had a hard time with that. Their expectations for her involvement with their kids seemed to have no relationship to the person they knew her to be from having grown up with her. Is that a problem a lot of people have?
Yeah, it is. It is a problem. But what the interesting thing is, so when you grew up with her, did she act interested in what was going on?
No, not until I was probably a teenager and got a little boy crazy. And then she's like very interested in the boy crazy stuff, but nothing before then.
But
No.
that's another thing that all of us find out, that we have strengths and vulnerabilities. And some of us are better parents to teenagers and others are better parents to infants. I myself feel I was a better mother to my teenage children than when they were infants. Like, I only had a certain amount of patience for sitting on the floor, building the blocks castle, knocking it down, building it again, the same thing, right? So, but there are lots of people who adore that and adore watching a child learn and seeing the excitement in a little infant. So, yeah, we all have our strengths and vulnerabilities as we go through life as parents, as grandparents.
There was a period of time I remember vividly. My first son was an early walker, and we're talking like 9 months old. He was walking. I was not prepared. So I took a couple weeks off right at Christmas, and he would just walk around the house. We had one of those, like, not an open floor plan, but you could pass through. So he would pick something up, start walking, put it down, pick something else up. He's 2 weeks and I'm following him around, afraid he's going to choke on like a guitar pick or a coin or something.
Exactly.
And I was like, oh my God, 2 weeks of this. But, like you said, everybody's got different sort of phases at which they're a better parent. I think I'm a much better parent now, probably. Like, I'm enjoying it much more now that they're teenagers and they have problems they want to talk about. And I feel like I actually know something about them versus the Wiggles, or like, I don't know anything about that. So we do have a question. How do you resolve some of these issues if your mom's passed away, or if your mom passed away early?
Well, it depends what the issues are. One of the things that we have to face is we are a nation who is kind of allergic to mourning. When Biden became president and he had a moment of silence for all the people who had died from the pandemic, and I just couldn't stop thinking about all those people and all those families and the ripple effect. And I know people who were gone to the pandemic, but we don't mourn the way people did mourn a generation ago and take a year, like, women in Italy used to wear black forever when they lost somebody who died. I think it was black forever, correct?
I don't remember. I'm Irish, so we try to pretend everything's fine. So,
Well, this pretend everything fine. I mean, this goes across many different ethnic groups, and that was really my mother's weakness and her strong point. And that's the thing. Sometimes that's what we learn, is that our strengths and our weaknesses are the exact same thing. I wouldn't have become a therapist if I didn't have a mother who was so negative about people's problems that I thought, people have problems. And I can't stand being around my mother who has no problems, even though she did have problems. Everyone has to read my book to find out what the problems were she had, right?
right. So it just looked like she didn't, but she did.
Yeah, she was very invested in being perfect.
Oh, that's exhausting. So I had other relatives. I'm not going to say who they were in case anybody sees this in my family. I don't want them to be upset. But yeah, there were some that everything was perfect, perfect, perfect. My mom was the opposite. She would put it all on the table. Hey, the dog puked on me. I don't like little kids. This is miserable. I don't like my job. It was like, you got what was going on in her head. And
But I
then
do
some.
want to get back to the question you asked. What about
Mm.
for many people, Mother's Day is a very sad holiday. And there's nothing that any therapist can tell you that's going to make it not a sad day. And owning and honoring your own sadness, it's a loss. If your mother is gone, she's gone. And if she died when you were young, this is considered one of the biggest losses in life, to have missed that. And so there are many things you can do. I mean, you can try to make the day, you can spend the day with somebody else who's missing their mother, and you can talk about your mothers. At the end of my book, I talk about how one thing people can do is they can make a ritual. They can have a ritual that honors their mother. They can write a poem to their mother. They can write a letter to their mother. Yeah, you can write a letter. You can write a letter that starts with, "Dear Mom, I want to catch you up on who I am now. You haven't seen me since I was 7 years old, and now I'm 47. It's very sad. It would make me cry to write that letter because my mother died 9 years ago and I wasn't 7,
Right.
you know? But it is sad to realize that you miss your mother, but being sad is a normal, appropriate experience.
Even if your relationship with your mother was complicated.
And even if it was complicated and even if it was ambivalent, and that's the word that I want to highlight, because nobody has a perfect mother. The best thing I got out of this book is realizing that I love my mother, even though she was very imperfect. And maybe it's okay that I'm a very imperfect mother as well, because I am. There were things I did that were outstanding and wonderful, and there are things that I did that were not so outstanding and wonderful. If you had a half an hour, I would tell you all of them.
I could think vividly about times that, in my kids' young lives where I was like, oh, I wish I had done better. I wish I'd handled that one thing better. And I like to think that even considering those things, I must be an okay mom if I care at all. But
even admitting them, even acknowledging them. And that's another question I sometimes ask mothers to talk about in front of their daughters. I'll ask a mother the question, tell your daughter how you were raised and how you wish you had been raised. Like what was missing from your childhood? And then I'll say to the mother, do you have any regrets? Were there any times in your life that were really hard? Like, for example, when a mother loses her mother, she might be in a period of grief and she might not be such a great mother, right? Or imagine if a mother loses both of her parents, as a client of mine described in a car accident, and the mother herself is wiped out. But the daughter is 7 years old. Well, the daughter feels abandoned. Life is very unfair. We don't get to choose everything that happens to us.
oh, it's so complicated. So we have a couple of comments coming in. Bob Collins says, I find more wonder when they were younger. Who am I kidding? I still find wonder with my son's teen days. He's like so in love with his kids. It's really nice to see it. We follow him. I follow him on Facebook and social. He's such a wonderful dad. So Carol says those perfect people when it comes to parenting do such a disservice to other parents.
Yay, Carol. I
Yeah.
agree. A disservice. And people who are only posting, pictures of happy, 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 it just makes everybody else feel, doesn't this woman ever lose it and just yell at her kids?
I feel like they do. They have to, right? They have to. all the
You
time.
have to.
Yeah. Oh, everything is so good. I went for a quick jog and put dinner in the crock pot and baked cupcakes for little Jamie's bake sale.
Oh, and then my 7-year-old had homework, so I stayed up until 11:30 at night helping him research Egypt.
But I got to put in those hours because I'm a vice president at work. So yeah, I know.
And I was up at 5:30 exercising. I had
Of course.
my trainer at 5:30 in the morning.
My lateral delts are my target muscle group for today.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we've all seen those posts. So Elizabeth says, thank you so much, Judith. Take ice cream to the lake and remember her.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth.
Big hugs. So I have a couple of things I need to do with ads, but don't go anywhere. If you
I'm
can
not going
stay.
anywhere.
Okay,
I'm
good.
yours. I'm yours.
Good. So there's just a couple of things I need to let everybody know that if you want to turn your show into an audio podcast, you can do that at castos.com. The Backpack Show is sponsored by castos.com, where you can find the audio version of this fabulous program. You can also get a .online domain. I've looked up a few different .online domains. You'll probably appreciate this, Dr. Judy. But I looked up your mom is .online was the first thing I looked up, and it was taken. I was like, oh, darn it. But you can get an online domain for just 99 cents using the code Chris. And then one more thing, make your own show. StreamYard sponsors us. This is a technology we use to run the show. It's super easy. It works really well, as you could probably see. So get your own author and psychologist to join your show, and then you can have your own show. Okay. We did it. We did all the ads just like that.
Well, you're a whiz at this.
Thanks. So Carol says COVID presents some interesting parenting challenges, cheerleading when you're feeling low yourself, having to say no to the social interactions they are desperate for, etc. Oh, that's so true. The kids that want to get together with their friends.
Oh, I feel fortunate that I had no children in my house during this, because I feel for my daughter. She has a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. My son has an 11-year-old and a 15-year-old. I mean, it's challenging. It was challenging for them to manage their children and the kids not be able to see their friends. Very hard, and a lot of responsibility for parents becoming educators in the middle of everything else.
I feel like a lot of the stresses that we have maybe put to bed, or we think we have, come back again when we're sort of thrown together in stressful situations like this. Like, you're not getting away from your mother issues when you're living with her, let's say, or if you're trying to parent your own children and you hear your mom's words coming out of your mouth. I don't do this, but my mom had a few catchphrases. One of them was, "What do you think this is? Fun and games? Surprise." "I'll smush your face in" was another good one. So my sister and I will still say.
Oh my goodness.
Well, she was from Somerville, Massachusetts. So "I'll smush your face in." So she sounded like like Ben Affleck in the movie The Town, basically.
Oh, funny.
So when you were examining your own relationship with your mother in the book, The Girl in the Red Boots, did you find it sort of cathartic, or was it difficult to go back to those places?
It was very cathartic. I had been writing about my mother for decades. But it was after she passed away in 2011 that I started putting this book together. And it was just an incredibly meaningful experience. I actually call it my ritual of mourning. I felt like she was with me all the time. And that's another thing. Even if your mother is gone, she's still with you. I'm sure anybody out there in the listening audience knows that we think about our mothers all the time, especially as we approach Mother's Day. But yeah, it was very cathartic because writing pushes us to slow down. Even if, of course, I was writing on a computer, but it forced me to slow down, think, and reflect. And, we live in such a fast-paced world. And even having a conversation is totally different than writing for 15 minutes. So I've been a therapist for like decades, but now I'm also teaching writing groups because I think that writing is really therapeutic. It was therapeutic for me. It was comforting for me. And it's a beautiful thing to do when somebody you love dies, to try to write about them. Yeah.
What about the role of forgiveness, for things, whether they're perceived slights or actual slights, is almost immaterial, right? Because it's how things land. Like, I've seen people carrying grudges against their mothers from decades ago about what sounds like pretty much nothing at all. But if they would forgive, they could move on and have an even better relationship with their mother now, not because anything's changed, but just because they've decided to let go of some things.
Well, I think the problem is that lots of people think forgiveness means forgetting. And I try to encourage people to think you don't have to forget. You're not going to forget. We are wired to remember things that have hurt us, but you can rearrange the story of your life. And that's really my logo on my website is change your story, change your life. Change your story, change your life. Those moments that we were very badly hurt, whether they were intentional or inadvertent. And I want to stress that most people really hurt their children inadvertently. Most mothers are not out to be cruel. They just sometimes are self-absorbed, self-centered, distracted, grieving, doing any one of many things, right? So that's a problem. If people understood that holding on to anger really hurts them and that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, they might be more interested in forgiving.
Coach Woodard has a question. Do you see a difference in mothers as they transition to being grandmothers?
Well, the answer to every hard question is it depends. And it depends. Some people transition gracefully. They just they take all their parenting skills and pour them into their role as grandparents. Many men in particular feel they missed parenting because they were working so hard. Like if you're on the brink of becoming a grandfather now, you're probably 60 years old. And in that generation, men worked like dogs. You know, they were out of the house 8 a.m, home 7 o'clock at night. So for many men that I know who are my contemporaries, becoming a grandfather is a unique opportunity to give their grandchildren the love that they couldn't give to their own children on an everyday, hands-on basis.
Getting to hold and love a baby in a way that maybe they didn't have the energy for at the time.
Exactly. And it depends. So it depends. If you become a grandparent and you're very healthy and you're retired, it's different than if you're a CEO and you're never around. Some people become grandparents at 50. They're prime, right?
Oh, we're so lucky. I think my in-laws, well, my mother-in-law was made to be a mother. She loves it, loves the kids, revels in all their things. All those things my mom thought were so boring, she loves the whole thing. She's like here for it. And I think they're so lucky. Like we're all so lucky, but my kids are so lucky to have that connection because all my grandparents had died before I was born. So, well, one died when I was like 5 or 6. But
Wow.
anyway, so I didn't have that chance to get to know them that way.
Wow.
But since the book came out, has it affected your relationship with other members of your family? Like, has anyone come forward and been like, why would you say that in public? Or were they welcoming of it?
Well, the only person I really the people I cared most about were my brother. I have one brother and my children. And I had my children read the book. And my son in particular, you know, he picked out some phrases and he wanted to know. I'm now in a second marriage for 25 years. But my son's father, who was my first husband, my son read that really thoroughly, you know, and he wanted to make sure I presented his father in a light that he felt comfortable with. And I wanted that too. So I welcomed his advice. And at the end of this book, I thanked my ex-husband because he had given me my wonderful children. My ex-husband is gone. He died 10 years ago from pancreatic cancer. It was really sad. And I wrote a book called Befriending Your Ex After Divorce, Making Life Better for You, Your Kids, and Yes, Your Ex. And my ex and I became very good friends after we were divorced. Not in the beginning of the divorce, but a few years after the divorce.
Wow.
And I learned a lot about forgiveness from writing that book. That all the things I might have said about him when I was getting divorced, I didn't feel those ways later on. They were still true. They really were still true, but they didn't have the weight. They didn't have the impact on me that they once did. I had rearranged my story. So now I really prized him as a wonderful co-parent.
Coach Woodard says for men, it's safer to show grandkids love than their own kids.
I think that's a beautiful statement, really. I think for many men, that being a grandparent allows their soft nature to come out and they can honor it. And, you know, mothering is joyous. I mean, mothering is actually joyous. And I think what's really great is that your generation and the generation after you, people having babies right now, there is much more co-parenting. And I think that really bonds a couple when they feel that parenting is a shared adventure, a shared journey, a shared voyage, as opposed to dad off working, mom home with the kids, cleaning the house, feeling frustrated and isolated. So, yeah, I think grandparenting offers unique things to especially men.
Carol said, I find letting go got so much easier when I became a mom because parenting is so rewarding, but the hardest job I've ever had. All we can do is our best and keep trying. It was amazing. Like the day after I had my first baby, all this stuff that seemed so important the day before was like not even registering anymore. So it's definitely a reorganization of all your priorities, I think,
A
in a good way.
reorganization. You know something funny? I mean, often I tell people who kind of mourn when they have parents, when they have children in their 20s, they wonder, where are my kids? They never call. They're busy running their own lives. I say, wait till they have kids. Then all of a sudden you have a different role in their life. And, you know, when my son had his first child, the day after he participated in the birthing of his first child, who's now 15, he called me up. He said, Mom, you did this for me. I mean, it's like that's the beginning of a child really appreciating what their parent did for them. That was my experience anyway.
Yep, I think it's like we had one comment that was they did. Oh, Coach Woodard had said that they were doing the best with what they had and with what they had to overcome. So the more I learned about, my own parents' upbringing, the more I realized, my mom had an absent father. He literally, her mom threw him out, so he was not present. And then my dad's side, he had, alcoholism in his family and his mom died when she was younger than I am now. So once you know what your parents had to contend with that maybe they didn't want to talk about when you were a baby, you start to appreciate what they did manage to do for you. So I think this is a fantastic book. Everybody go get this for Mother's Day. It's good for
Oh,
you.
thank you so much. Yes, I know. I'm hoping that it'll
If you
really
have a
sell out
mom,
on Mother's Day.
it's for you. Go and get it. I'll put up your website, Judith Ruskay, Rabinor, PhD.com. I do have to ask you one more question because we ask everybody this question. What goes in your backpack, Dr. Judy, for success? If you can have one thing, it could be physical, like an avocado, or it could be metaphorical, like kindness or resilience. What goes in your backpack for success?
A bottle of water.
Hydration is
We are
important.
all dehydrated. We are all dehydrated, and that's a metaphor. A bottle of water can symbolize so many things, but it really, think how many times during the day you start drinking water and you realize, oh my God, I was really thirsty. And when you slowly drink a bottle of water in a mindful way, you can think about what else do I need to nurture myself? And I love the idea of a backpack. We need to drink a bottle of water and take more walks than we are taking, because now we're all chained to these computers on Zoom and every other, platform all day long. So that's what goes in my backpack, my sneakers and a bottle of water.
And don't forget StreamYard. We're also chained to StreamYard, but I love it.
Chained to StreamYard. Excuse me. Sorry, Kelly.
No, you're so right. Thank you so
StreamYard.
much. No, this has been so fun. I really appreciated it. I think everybody has, a complicated relationship with their mother, even if they're close. So this has been hugely beneficial.
Me too.
Now,
You.
I should tell you about my own mother and some of the things she said that you would not believe. So one time I answered the phone and somebody thought that I was my mother and they said, well, I just didn't look at my mother the same way again after that, I'll tell you.
I love that. That was great.